Good morning, everyone, and happy Thursday. This is Jordan Gray, the Communication and Outreach Coordinator of the Turtle Survival Alliance. And I want to welcome all of you to Turtles 401. It is a beautiful day here in sunny South Carolina, home of the Turtle Survival Alliance and TSA Studios. And I hope you all are having a beautiful day wherever you are. And let's talk about turtles. It's another great week. We have more coming in. Some of the aloha from Hawaii. Hello, Mike. How you doing? We have Ambuj here from India, Boris from the Netherlands, the Colonian Hut. You're going to have to tell me your real name, the Colonian Hut, because the Colonian Hut and we have corresponded numerous times on email after these webinars, and I need to know your real name. But they're coming in from Thailand. So today we are going to follow up with our Turtles 301, talking about growth, age, and longevity. These are some of the most common questions I get when I do outreach, as how do turtles grow? What's the oldest turtle in the world? How long can turtles live? All very common questions, and I'm sure maybe some of those are questions that you might have in your mind as well. So we'll get into that today. Of course, as always, we at the TSA are very empathetic to everyone throughout the world who is suffering in some way from the COVID-19 pandemic. So just I want to let you know that here at the TSA, our thoughts are with you in this time. Also, as this is an interactive Q&A session, please feel free to type questions in at any time, and I will try to respond to them in real time as well as I can. And let's get started. All right, it is Turtle. It's not Turtle Tuesday, but hey, it's Turtle Thursday. It starts with a T, so whatever. All right, so today we are talking about age and longevity and growth. So as you can see there, a nice young juvenile Batagur cachuga. That's the red-crowned roof turtle. Oh, excuse me, I just messed up. Wrong slide I had put in. So this one is actually Batagur borneoensis. This is the painted terrapin from Sumatra. Hey, every once in a while I make a mistake. And then on the right-hand side, we have the alligator snapping turtle. Turtle that is beloved by many around the world. It is native to the southeast and south central United States, and probably the most fearsome looking turtle on Earth. All right, Ambuj is asking how to get associated with the TSA. He is a YouTuber and makes videos on turtles. Ambuj, please contact me directly. I'll have my email address up here. But if the amazing David Hedrick, my partner in Turtle Crime on the other side of the screen, wants to type in my email address, it is jgray@turtlesurvival.org, because I would love to talk with you about collaborating on turtle videos, especially in, let's see, in India, because our largest Turtle Survival Alliance country program is actually in India. So it'd be a great place for you to make an impact for the turtles in your country. All right, so let's move on to a promo plug. All right, so World Turtle Day is coming up in only 24 days. On the 23rd of May every year, turtle conservationists, turtle lovers, turtle enthusiasts, and just anybody who loves a turtle celebrates this day. It is World Turtle Day, and we have World Turtle Day commemorative apparel. So we have t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies available at bonfire.com. You can find that link, however, on our website, www.turtlesurvival.org. These are made each year, so once these are gone, they will not be back. So don't miss out. Order your apparel today. I already know of 3 of them because they come in many different colors that I will be ordering. So definitely jump on that as soon as you can. Most likely we'll run it for just a little bit after World Turtle Day, and then poof, it will be gone until next year. All right. Boris says, yes, ordered one a week ago. Awesome. Thank you, Boris, for ordering one of the t-shirts, I presume, or maybe a hoodie since you're in the Netherlands. Nothing like a hoodie to keep you warm in those Nordic winters. Okay, so last week we talked about development, hatching, and hatchling natural history. And I want to play 2 of these videos again for you in case you missed them last week, because they are fascinating. They won't take up too much time, but in case you missed it, on the very left-hand side of your screen, you are going to see a video that was produced by Chiu Fei in China, and this is of the development of a turtle embryo. This is through a technique called the shell-less incubation technique. So let me cue that up there. There we go. All right, I hope you all were able to catch that video and enjoy it again. Absolutely fascinating to be able to watch the development of a turtle embryo in an environment in which there's not the eggshell obscuring it. The next one I'll go to naturally in progression is the hatching of a turtle. This is a yellow-headed or golden-headed box turtle, Cuora aurocapitata, at our Turtle Survival Center, a critically endangered species. And let me cue that up. There we go. All right, so I hope you all enjoyed that video. By the way, a turtle typically does not hatch that quickly. I sped that video up by 5,000%. That actually happened over the course of numerous hours. But of course, for your viewing pleasure, we sped it up greatly to turn it into a time lapse. All right, so moving on, let's talk about turtles' growth. This is a very interesting subject. There's some things that maybe we won't dive too into today, but we'll at least give a pretty good overview. So this, of course, is where I start the Q&A. So the first question is, what factors do you think influence a turtle's growth? So I will give you all just a minute to respond. Please type in your guesses in the in your chat column, and I would love to look about them. Let's see, and I do have some questions. So Mike Hasselbring asks, how do you feel about people that crossbreed leopard and sulcata tortoises? Well, I don't know the people themselves. Maybe they're wonderful people. But as far as crossbreeding animals, that can be a tricky subject and a slippery slope that I want to watch when I answer this question. Personally, I try to, if I'm breeding species, I try to keep it very, very strict, not just at the species level, but at the subspecies level. I've seen, throughout the years, numerous intergradations of subspecies or hybridization of two different species. The one problem that can arise from that is when people sell or give away or rehome those offspring. Those now integrated or hybridized genes are entering the captive gene pool. And as we know, records do get lost, things get misportrayed. And so what can happen is that when intergradations or hybridizations occur, it can lead to a diluting of the quote-unquote purebred gene pool of that species. Now, for some of the really common species that are kept in captivity, does that have a major effect? I don't know. But we do know from a conservation concern, when you look in the long run, it is important to keep those gene pools separate. I say that because if you look at these three-striped box turtles of Southeast Asia, you will find that they have been hybridized and integrated heavily over many years. The problem is those species are now critically endangered, and so being able to actually find genetically pure specimens is a more difficult task. If you are not able to, with great certainty or a high degree of certainty, develop captive management stocks of genes that are specific to the species, then how can you create a conservation program and a captive breeding program for that individual species? So there are long-term ramifications when you look at it from the conservation standpoint. All right, so now I want to go back. I'm going to look back over here. Regarding, because we're going to go back to growth now, because that's what we were talking about. But Mike, thank you very much for your question. So let's see. Boris says UVA and UVB, right? So your ultraviolet radiation. Anna says diet. Teresa says temperature. Boris says sunlight and warmth. Let's see what else. Ambuj asked if I can talk about our progress on the black softshell turtle reintroduction in India. Ambuj, that's a really great question, and I want to answer that tomorrow. So right here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, here in the continental United States, I will be doing your turtle questions answered. That means I will be going back through all of our previous webinars, looking for questions that either I couldn't answer at the time, I didn't see, or questions that require a more lengthy answer. So please, let's talk about that tomorrow. Can't wait. Let's see. Boris says, what about space? Let's see what else. Isaiah says calcium. The Kilonian Hut asks, so Kuora muhadai and Kuora boreti, hybridization in the wild. So yes, those two species do hybridize naturally, creating a turtle that we call Kuora serrata, basically as a general description, but it is neither a species nor a subspecies. It is just a naturally occurring hybrid between two or more species from the genus Kuora. All right, Teresa says proper habitat. Yeah, so all these answers are fantastic regarding growth. You all, either you've been listening to the webinars or you study turtles and know your stuff. So there's all really good. I'm gonna jump over here and to the next page to show you some things that I think are all factors influencing turtle growth. Okay, so there's numerous factors, okay? Think about it just like you growing up. Think about all the different influences that helped you grow from a baby to maybe you're still a kid, maybe you're an adult now, or maybe you're well over 200 years old and a world record holder. I'm not sure, but either way, there was a lot of influences on your growth and development. So for turtles, diet and feeding, as many of you said, water availability, moisture, and humidity. And I'm going to talk more about humidity when we talk about growth of the shell, because humidity is extremely important. Temperature and thermoregulation. Okay, so the turtle's ability to be able to find warmth, to be able to find cool spaces, and it's the seasonal and daily and temporal variation in all of those. Metabolism, of course, hormones, ultraviolet radiation, as I know Boris guessed there. So you have your UVA, your UVB, and your UVC light. Vitamin and mineral absorption and synthesis, very, very important. Things like calcium, phosphorus, potassium, vitamin D3, I think many of you know of, especially if you go out in the sunshine. And of course, very important, genetics. So all of those are primary factors that influence the growth of a turtle from hatchling to adulthood. All right, so one of the questions I get all the time is, how does a turtle shell grow? So if you've tuned in before, we've talked about how turtles have a bony shell. And so whether it is a hard-shelled turtle or a soft-shelled turtle, like the soft-shelled turtles, the flap-shelled turtles, or the leatherback sea turtle, there is still a bony shell lying underneath with skin over it. In the hard-shelled turtles, we have a bony shell that is covered by keratinaceous plates. Again, keratin is the same stuff that makes up your fingernails, your skin, your hair, and it is just the outer layer that protects the bone, as well as provides the availability to express the color pigments in the pigment-producing cells within the turtle. All right, so if you look on the left-hand side, simply put, we have a box turtle that has no keratin scutes or plates on it. That is just the general bony structure of the shell. In the middle, you can see a little bit of those keratin plates still remaining on that turtle shell, but it just gives you a good representation of kind of the difference between that bony shell and the outer lying keratin layer. And then on the right-hand side, we have a box turtle that is fully clothed. It is covered in all of its keratin plates. And as you can see, these keratin plates are allowing the pigments to show through. So you have this brightly colored box turtle. So how do turtles grow? Okay, so let's look at this big bony shell. Okay, it's 200 some million years of evolution. It has suited the turtles very, very well due to the fact that, well, they're still living, and many species who are around at the same time as them have long since died off. All right, so if you look at this turtle shell, it is generally a dome, you know, some level of dome. Sure, some species of turtles are very flat, but we're still going to look at it as kind of a dome, an oval, circle, however you want to see it. And if you look at the arrow I've added in, this is pointing to the seams in the bony growth plates. Okay, so a turtle shell is not all one bone. It is basically think of it as a puzzle of many different bones all put together. Well, if you look at those seams, that reminds me of tectonic plates in the Earth. So in case you all don't know, the Earth's crust has a series of major tectonic plates, and they are all pressing together with immense pressure. Okay, so the Earth is a globe, right? And you have all of these tectonic plates that are pushing against each other because of the pressures within. Well, when a turtle grows, and this is very important for those of you who might have turtles in captivity and are raising them and want them to look just like a turtle does in the wild, you have to take into account the pressures being involved. So all of those plates are like tectonic plates. As they're growing, they're putting pressure on each other while expanding. And those bones are growing just as our bones do. There are many different factors that lead to proper growth, just like we talked about before. One major one is moisture and humidity. And I'm going to talk about that now as I talk about the outer layer of the shell, these keratinaceous scutes or plates. So if you look at this radiated tortoise, and by the way, this was just a gorgeous radiated tortoise that I photographed in Madagascar. It has the bony shell is overlaid by these keratin plates. And these keratin plates have to grow basically uniformly with that bony shell as it grows underneath. So how does it do this? Well, there are messages relayed within the body, telling things to grow. And of course, DNA is the central core of all of these messages, telling the body how it is supposed to properly form. Well, these plates grow what we call radially. So they're growing kind of in a circle. Now, as you can see, these keratinaceous plates are not precise circles, but the growth of the new keratin comes from the seams. And if you look on there, where I have radial growth, that is the seam of the plate or the scute. And so your new keratin material builds from underneath, from where the seams are, and continues to add. If you also look, I have a note where the first annuli is. So each ring that we see on a turtle shell is called an annuli. Singular and annulus. This is the new keratinaceous growth plate. Sorry. The first annuli would be the very first plate when that turtle hatched from an egg, and they retain that, but it may wear down or get shed off over time, and I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But as you can see, it grows radially. You have the first annuli, and then those growth rings are new annuli that are added. So a question I get all the time, and boom, was asked by Boris just now, is can you tell by the growth lines the age of a turtle, just as in trees? Boris, it's almost like I hired you as like a ringer, because We are actually going to get to that in just a minute. But let's talk about shedding really quick before we talk about telling a turtle's age by the rings on its shell. All right, so all turtles, tortoises, terrapins, sea turtles, again, remember, as I've said in my past webinars, I'm just going to call them all turtles as they're all chelonians. They all do shed. Now, how they shed varies amongst the type of turtle it is. Now, just like us, their skin is constantly shedding. Okay, so the outer layer of their epidermis is shedding. I don't know if you know this, but about 80% of the dust in your household is actually skin cells. Those are skin cells that are being sloughed off on a daily basis as you are constantly shedding that outer keratin layer that makes up your epidermis. All right, so Boris says, too soon asked. Just kidding. So Boris is not a ringer. He always has great questions, though. So Boris, love having you on. But so turtles are always shedding as well. Now, some turtles shed in a larger patchwork kind of fragmentation. Others shed kind of like we do in very small pieces. Now, in a human, we see ourselves shed in greater amounts when you get something like a sunburn. So when you get a sunburn, you have damaged the outer layers of your skin cells, and it can go deeper than that into your dermis, underneath the epidermis. So what happens is that your body, as it's regenerating cells, needs to slough or get rid of that old skin material. And so what you do is you peel, and that peel is shedding. Now, when we peel from a sunburn, we can think of that as macro shedding, like you see in that picture. But our day-to-day shedding is what we would refer to as micro shedding. And this happens in turtles as well. So if you look on the left, you're going to see this spotted turtle, Chlemys guttata, a species from the eastern United States and Canada. This turtle is one that, as an adult, expresses microshedding. And if you look closely at your screen, you're going to see kind of little gray, dry-looking pieces on its carapace or top shell. And that is where it is doing microshedding of that outer layer. Now, if you look over to the right, you're going to see a painted turtle. And this is an eastern painted turtle that is demonstrating macro shedding. And so in macro shedding, the whole entire layer of scute will shed off in one piece, and there will be new keratin underneath. There are numerous species in the world that perform this macro shedding. However, there are overall a larger amount of species that perform that micro shedding. All right, so Ambuj asks, okay, so what about soft-shell turtles? Is it the same keratin, as I've never seen one shedding? Okay, so with soft-shell turtles, they have that bony carapace and plastron underneath that soft shell. So a soft-shell turtle is going to shed in the same manner that we as humans do. They're going to perform micro-shedding. And it is in very, very small little fragments of cell clusters that is being shed off. So no, they don't go through this macro shedding. Instead, they are going to be much like a human in the way that they shed the outer layer of their skin on their shell. All right, so next, let's move on to Boris's question. An age-old question, just as old as a turtle. Can you tell the age of a turtle by counting the rings on its shell? This is so common, and it's one in which there's a lot of kind of myth behind it. So a lot of people say, yes, you can count the growth of a turtle just like the rings in a tree by counting the rings, or as we just learned, the annuli of the scutes. So take a look at these pictures here. These turtles are all approximately the same size. On the left, we have a juvenile radiated tortoise. Next in from that, we have a juvenile North American wood turtle. Then we have a juvenile painted terrapin. And then lastly, on the right, we have a juvenile western painted turtle. Okay, as you can see, I have added in the number of growth rings or annuli that I have counted on these animals. So that very young radiated tortoise demonstrates 10 annuli. That wood turtle, about the same size, demonstrates 3. That painted terrapin demonstrates 2, while that painted turtle on the right demonstrates 4. Okay. So here's the main, oh, I love that. Kate Green and Boris Berlin just said they ordered hoodies. So thank you so much for supporting the TSA and World Turtle Day. All right, so here's the thing. When you see a growth ring on a turtle, what that is representing is a growth spurt. But if a turtle lives in a warm climate, like a subtropical or tropical climate, it might have multiple growth spurts within a year. Therefore, for turtles such as that, counting the rings on the shell really just gives you an idea of how many growth spurts that turtle has had since the time it hatched. Now, for some turtles, like that North American wood turtle, who live in temperate and northern forests of the Great Lakes and Mid-Atlantic and New England and southern Canada, they have 4 distinct seasons. So spring, summer, fall, and winter. And so that turtle is going to experience different temperature extremes. It's also going to experience different extremes in the amount of food sources available. And so for that species, up until about the age of 18, counting the growth annuli, growth rings, is actually fairly accurate for being able to tell how old it is. Because we know that during the fall and winter and maybe even early spring, they're not eating too much, if at all, while during the later spring, summer, and early fall, they are foraging throughout the forests and streams they live in. So that period of activity where they're eating would represent typically 1 major growth spurt for them per year. Okay, but then we move on to that whole thing that we just discussed about shedding. Some turtles experience micro shedding, while others experience macro shedding. And this can very much alter the way that we see these rings or growth annuli. On your far right-hand screen, take a look at that painted turtle. Well, by the time they're about 2 to 3 years old, in the wild, the juveniles or just about subadults will start macro shedding just as they do when they are adults. So that means the whole layer of keratin is coming off of each scute with a new layer underneath. Well, what happens every time is that those growth annuli smooth out just a little bit each time. By the time that turtle is an adult, they will have a completely smooth shell because of that macro shedding. However, again, let's go back to that North American wood turtle. They go through micro shedding, or they'll have their shells worn down by the environmental factors from those habitats they live in, like rocky streams. If you can imagine, a turtle moving amongst river rocks and sandbars and log jams is going to experience rubbing on that shell, which can help aid in basically smoothing down the shell. So when I find a North American wood turtle, we typically count the growth rings, or annuli again, on multiple scutes, not only on the carapace or top shell, but also the plastron, the bottom shell, to get an age estimate for that animal. At about 18 years old, or 18 growth seasons, which would be a more accurate description, they stop adding rings or growth annuli. And I'm going to get to that in just a minute. So let's see, do we have any questions right now regarding counting the rings of the shell? I'm going to leave it on this picture frame for just a minute in case there's any questions you might have that I didn't get to, or maybe, who knows, I just forgot to add something in there about counting the rings on a turtle shell. So what I'll add as y'all are thinking of your questions is that it is really a kind of a yes and no answer. Once turtles hit their maximal size, which we're going to get to in just a minute, they will stop adding these new growth annuli, and the process of wearing down either continues or begins. And that's why if you find an old turtle, they oftentimes have very, very smooth, worn down shells. Greg S. says, it depends. Yep, basically. That's a good answer. It depends. There are numerous factors at play. So the best thing you can do is just, again, think of growth annuli as growth spurts. And in some species, it can give you a general estimate or even a pretty good estimate of the age of that turtle. In others, it is not a very good indication of their ability to display age. And while you are adding things, I'm going to bring out two turtles just to demonstrate what I was talking about. All right. The Colonian Hut says, can you count the annuli on soft shells? And the answer is no, you cannot. Boris asks, what about the white lines between the scutes? Is that a fresh growth line? So yes, when you see those whitish lines between, that is the seam of the scute, and that is where the new keratin is basically being built from. It's being built from underneath, but it expresses itself outward on the edges of the old keratin plates. And that's how the new annuli is added in a radial pattern or a ring pattern. So I'm going to bring out two of my wonderful little turtle friends here. Happy little turtles. Okay, here we go. Grabbing the first one. I'm going to dry her off a minute because they are wet. I just don't want to drip water all over. I'm sure she'll just pee on me anyway. And let me grab the second one here. Okay, I'm just going to put you in my lap. Don't pee on me, turtle. Don't pee on me. All right, so. All right, so I have two Diamondback Terrapins here. Hopefully you all can see them. I have a concentric phase female on the right here, and I have a what I just call the peppered phase female on the left here. Now, as you can see, they are approximately the same size. However, because we have raised these in captivity, I know that this turtle here, the concentric phased one, was hatched in 2016. She will turn 4 years old this summer. I also know that this turtle here, again, just the same size as the other one, hatched in 2006. So she will be 14 years old this summer. So even though they are about the same size, one is 10 years older, a full decade older than the other. Now, for the one that is a full decade older, okay, so her name is Blue, by the way. So for Blue, she still demonstrates some grooves from growth annuli, but because she has been macro shedding every year for numerous years now, her shell is worn pretty smooth. Whereas in Peppa here, Peppa will turn 4 years old again, and she still has rather distinct growth annuli or growth rings. However, she is of the age where she has now been macro shedding for about 2 years, and so now those growth rings are starting to get worn down. So it's just something interesting. So despite being the same species, about the same size, their shells are actually starting to look relatively similar, even though they are a decade difference in age. All right, so I have some questions coming in here. Anna Green asks, do eastern box turtles stop adding growth annuli after 18 years old as well? So eastern box turtles do stop adding growth annuli as well. It depending on where the eastern box turtle is from, depends on its on that growth spurt or the number of growth spurts it might have in a season. For instance, a box turtle from upstate New York will typically just have one growth spurt per year, while a box turtle from southern Georgia may have one or more growth spurts per year. And they do stop adding those annuli once they have reached adult size. And at that point, the shell starts wearing down, just like I was talking about with the North American wood turtle. All right, so Catherine Craven asked, do they listen to you? I would like to think that the turtles listen to me. I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, yes, do I have a propensity to just ramble on? Yeah, but I mean, what else does the turtle have to do then to listen to me? I don't know. Emily asks, are those Salt and Peppa? So Salt, Peppa's sister, is actually back in our outreach pond. We have a pond where we keep Diamondback Terrapins to use for outreach, and Salt is back there. I just brought Peppa today, but we do have Salt and Peppa. Do not worry. I know, all of a sudden, a late 80s dance tune is now in your head. Thank you very much. All right, so it doesn't seem like we have any more questions about the age of a turtle shell. So let's move on to age and longevity. All right, so here's the big thing. I always get asked, how old is a turtle when it reaches maturity? Okay, so the main thing to remember is that maturity is actually based more on size than it is age. Now, of course, for different species, it might take the same general amount of years to attain that size, but geographic regions can greatly influence that. Okay, let's go back to the example I was just talking about. A eastern box turtle in upstate New York might take 10 years, maybe even more, to reach adulthood because they are spending about half the year in a state of dormancy, in brumation, under the ground, when cold temperatures, snow and ice grip their landscape. Whereas in that eastern box turtle in southern Georgia might attain adulthood in just about 4 years because they have a much longer growing season. In some areas, it is so temperate or subtropical during the winter, that they are able to continue feeding during the winter time as well. So those are major factors. So what we do is we look at a mature turtle based on its size. And after you have measured enough turtles, you can gain an approximate or medial size for that species at maturity. For instance, for this Diamondback Terrapin, it's generally regarded that maturity is obtained once the plastron or bottom shell reaches 135 millimeters, which is 13.5 centimeters, or about 5.3 inches. So by looking at that plastron size and measuring it, we can gauge whether the female turtle is a subadult or if she has now reached sexual maturity. So the next thing I want to go on to is a turtle growing, because I get that question all the time. Do they continue to grow? So once they hit maturity, a turtle will continue to grow until it hits its maximal size. Okay, once it hits that maximal size, because as we talked about before, your bones are constantly growing and cycling out. Your skin is constantly shedding and cycling out. Those turtles will continue growth, but it is in such minute increments that it is not measurable. At the same time, all the environmental influences, so again, think about a turtle in nature rubbing against leaves and dirt and sand and rocks and wood and water flowing against it, is going to have those environmental impacts continue to wear at the turtle's shell. I want you to think of it this way. Okay, for many of us who work at computers or go to school, say you clip your nails, okay? And you've created nicely manicured nails. Now, go out of that environment and do lawn work, do yard maintenance, landscaping, whatever, and then take a look at your fingernails. Now, some of you are saying, well, you should just be wearing gloves. But okay, this analogy is for if you're not wearing gloves. So you will see that your fingernails are no longer nicely manicured like they were before you went and did those activities out, amongst the dirt, getting dirty. You'll see that they have scratches on them. You'll see that they might be worn down a bit. You might have even broken a nail while doing those activities. Well, just think of it as the same concept for the outer layer of a turtle shell living in nature. All right, so for each kind of turtle, how big do they get? Okay, what is the maximal individual size? Well, it's based on numerous things. And those different things, and we're not going to get too much into those today because I think some of them are more better for a kind of a highly scientific webinar, but they're based on genetics. Okay, so again, DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, we're all made of that. Personally, because I've been eating a lot of Lucky Charms lately, my DNA has changed its, there's been some recombination and I have a few marshmallows in there, but to each their own. Then we also have species morphology. So the DNA of each species dictates how that species is supposed to look, basically, once it is full grown, and the sizes that it can attain. But there are also geographical influences. Again, for turtles who, let's take the same species of turtle again. All right, so a turtle who lives in one area might actually be smaller or larger than the same species of turtle in a different area. Okay, so there are geographical influences, but then there's also some genetics and epigenetics that are involved with that. So, by the way, many of you might not have ever heard of the term epigenetics. So, epigenetics is heritable traits in which there's a change in the expression of DNA rather than a change in its code. And this is oftentimes seen through plasticity. So if you look at my next one, I have environmental plasticity. This is a great time to talk about the picture I have there. So what you're looking at are common or eastern musk turtles, Sternothrus odoratus. This species is native to the eastern United States and Canada, and it is a species that doesn't grow very large, but at our research site in Texas, through our North American Freshwater Turtle Research Program, we have found that not only do the turtles grow larger on average than they do across their range, but their cranium, okay, their head, their skull, grows significantly larger than it does for other populations across the range. Why is that? Well, in this spring system, there are invasive species of mollusks, okay, predominantly different types of snails. And the turtles have found that these snails are pretty tasty, and I don't blame them. I love escargot. But what it is that because the turtles have found that they really enjoy these tasty snails, they have become a primary component of their diet. But if something becomes a primary component of your diet, well, there might be some shifting in how your body looks to be able to regularly consume that prey. And so we see that with these musk turtles. So they'll start growing much larger heads, and their beaks, remember we talked about this in an earlier webinar, their beaks, which have a keratin layer on the outside, actually continue to grow much larger in size. And so what this is phenotypic, or the outward expression of an animal, plasticity, so again, being malleable, we'll call it. By the way, when I'm going like this, I'm thinking of a piece of taffy, to the environment based on epigenetics. So these common musk turtles have passed down this heritable trait now through generations in this population, whereas when this food source is commonplace in the environment. Sorry, I just got stuck up there. Maybe I need another sip of my coffee. Is that so? When this food source is in the environment, the animal's bone structure, their keratin growth, and other aspects of their body will actually adapt to suit their food source, their prey items. All right, I have some questions coming in. That's kind of distracting me. I want to get to really quick. Catherine says, is it more effective to measure the carapace or the plastron? So for aging a turtle, again, with maturity, one can go by both the carapace or the plastron, but I have seen, and I personally go by plastron size for maturity in turtles. Great question, Catherine. Emily says, have you ever found turtle populations shifting smaller in areas where they are fished? Fishes have that issue. So Emily, fantastic question. So this happens commonly throughout species that are hunted. Okay, if you look at bighorn sheep out in the Rocky Mountains of the United States, because hunters have targeted the trophy animals, the males with the biggest rack of horns, what happens is their genetics are eliminated or reduced, depending on if they had already bred in that population. And so what we're seeing now is bighorn sheep in the Rocky Mountains with overall average smaller sizes in their horns, because those animals, the trophy animals, your big, best genetics, are being hunted out. Same thing with fish, absolutely. So what we've seen with turtles, and the one example I'll talk about is alligator snapping turtles. So alligator snapping turtles were heavily hunted for food in the southeastern and south central United States. Now, many populations show animals that are significantly reduced in size. However, there's two ways that we can look at this. Okay, we can look at it one way. The rebound of the population has not been long enough to actually have really large, old, mature specimens in the population. So that's one way we can look at it, because a lot of the protections for alligator snapping turtles have only occurred in the last decade, if not last 2 decades. Protecting the alligator snapping turtle has been a rapid evolution or adaptation of states' laws to decreasing populations. Another thing that it could be is that, yes, larger animals were hunted out of these populations, and so your big bull males, okay, your large clucking hens, the big females, have been fished out of there over numerous decades, losing maybe some of those prime genetics. You know, your ones that really help this turtle prosper in the environment. So that is absolutely a hypothesis we could have there. The Colonian Hut asks, does the prey item in the habitat affect the population in the area? Great question, and yes, it can absolutely have an effect. As I was saying, in this spring system in Texas, the prey items, the invasive snails of various different species, which, by the way, the Turtle Survival Alliance North American Freshwater Turtle Research Group has actually published in Southwestern Naturalist, that is influencing the turtle population. We have a conservative population estimate in just a 54-hectare lake of over 14,000 common musk turtles. So we think that the prevalence of this prey has not only increased the turtle's size, increased their ability to respond to that prey, but also had benefits for that population and their reproductive potential. So Greg says, Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah, I do have my Dunkin' Donuts. Yes, here in the South, we do have Dunkin' Donuts as well. Okay, now you just inspired me to have another drink. Emily says, no Red Bull today. No, I don't have my Red Bull today, but it looks like Dunkin' Donuts needs to sponsor us now. Right, Dunkin' Donuts? Greg says, bluefin tuna, no huge ones caught anymore. Absolutely, large ones have been fished out. That's the thing. You know, when you overfish a species, you're going to start losing those large individuals, especially when the larger individuals command higher prices. Let's see what else. Shopti in India says, here in India, the government is very strict if it comes to turtle life. Absolutely. So Shopti, just so you know, our largest Turtle Survival Alliance program is in India. So we would love for you to support that program. And we have had wonderful support from the Uttar Pradesh Forest Department and the Madhya Pradesh Forest Department, the West Bengal Forest Department, Wildlife Trust of India, and other NGOs in that country. So it's been a wonderful place for us to be able to do conservation efforts in on behalf of the country's native turtles and tortoises. Emily says, American turtle scientists run on Duncan. We run on lots of things. Now, if it's out in the field, I'd say it's probably running on some sort of potent potable, maybe some cerveza. Oh, Shopti, you are from Uttar Pradesh. Wonderful. Okay, so that is where our TSA India program is headquartered. We're headquartered in Lucknow at the Kukrel, Gharial, and Turtle Rehabilitation Center, where we also have the lab, the Laboratory for Aquatic Biology. So if you would like to get involved in turtle conservation in Uttar Pradesh, please contact me directly, and I would love to put you in touch with Dr. Shailendra Singh. All right, last but not least on how the maximum size of a turtle is determined is its pedigree. Okay, so just think about this, okay? Think about where you're from. Think about your ancestry, your lineage. Okay, so I think about my mom and dad, all right? So my dad, you know, he's about 5'10". My mom is about 5 feet. The other members of our family lineage is about in those same height ranges. So here I am at 5'9", but with a good pair of disco shoes, yeah, I might be 6 foot. But either way, so the lineage from which a turtle comes from also has an influence on the overall size in which it will attain. All right, so next we are going to go to the fact that the age of a wild turtle is difficult to ascertain. And I've already talked about this, so I'm not going to stay on this for long. But it is difficult to ascertain, again, because various species have various attributes which demonstrate their age. There's also these environmental influences. There's these, you know, the whole genome behind each species that is influencing it. There's, you know, these environmental factors. If you look at that picture, that is me. I am looking at a male and a female North American wood turtle. And again, for this species, up until about the age of 18 or its 18th growing season, scientists are able to give a good estimate as to how old that specimen is. Now, I know just from knowing these turtles that the male, which is in my right hand, so your left if you're looking at the screen, is well over 18 years old because his shell not only demonstrates about 18 growth annuli, but those annuli are wearing down. However, that female you see pictured has 15 distinct growth annuli. So she was probably in her 16th year of life when this picture was taken back in 2014. But again, once a turtle reaches adulthood, there are actually no ways in which we can say this is how old this turtle is. You can make educated guesses for how old that turtle is, but you know, knowing the exact age is just something that we don't have technology for. All right. So that brings me to my question. It's time for you all to answer, and then I can take a nice little Dunkin' Donuts coffee break. Is what factors do you think make an educated guess for scientists trying to elucidate or guess the age of a turtle? And if you've been watching, I think some of the answers may have already been told to you, but we'll bring in the wonderful sound of the Jeopardy music now. All right, now I'm actually on a time delay, by the way, of about 10 seconds. So we'll see if anybody has some of those guesses as to how you think when we find a wild turtle, we can guess how old it may be. All right, here they come. They're coming in. Greg says past data of same species in the same area. Greg, that is a fantastic guess. Absolutely. Boris says length or weight. Yes, absolutely. So its length may give us some idea. But if you remember, I just showed you two female Diamondback Terrapins who are approximately the same size. However, one is indeed 10 years older than the other one. Its weight. Weight may be a factor. Alan says growth rings on the scutes. Yep, that's something we talked about. And for certain species and up until a certain age, that can help us make an educated guess as to how many growth seasons it has had. Emily says having a baseline database based off of, you got a lot of bases in there, Emily, based off of turtles that you know the age of. So yes, baseline data is so important. And that is why it is really important that we do research on species that are not only endangered or critically endangered or threatened, but we need to get as much baseline data as we can on quote unquote common species, because oftentimes they are overlooked. But the fact is that most turtles who are now critically endangered were once common. So it's extremely important to get that baseline data, and that baseline data can help with guesstimating the age of a turtle. So Boris says the amount of annuli. Yes, as we talked about, excellent. Bill Eilerman says overall size. Bill, by the way, it's great to see you here. I've missed seeing you in person and chatting at our events. So wonderful to have you here. So Bill says the amount of annuli, the overall size and smoothness of a carapace. Exactly. That's a great way for us to make an estimate. Peter Paul Van Dyke said traces of annuli plus overall wear of the shell. Excellent guess there, Peter Paul Van Dyke. And often you just have to say probably much older than 20 years. Peter Paul, it's almost like you guessed the next slide I was going to get to. So yes, those are both great from Peter Paul Van Dyke. Greg S says large turtle scientist brains. Now we don't want to make anyone's head bigger than it is, but yeah, some turtle scientists have bigger brains than others. Don't go guesstimating the size of mine. Okay, you could either blow up my head or conversely make me feel very bad about myself. But I guess that's why it's called self-esteem, isn't it? Greg says, or Emily says, my brain hasn't been great at forming sentences today. Boris says, I'm with Greg. And then Sarah Gilman comes in and says, ha, I agree with Peter Paul Van Dyke. This is what we often tell people about common snappers. So yes, everything that you all have said, and that we've already talked about throughout the last hour are all ways that we can make educated guesses. Oftentimes it is having a lot of baseline data, having a lot of hands-on experience with certain species of turtles, knowing the parameters, the age parameters of that species, taking into account environmental factors, taking into account geography, and also population genetics. So all different things that we can add in. Peter Paul says, I've done this age estimation stuff in an earlier life. Peter, I can't imagine when that earlier life would be. You're such a spry young buck as it is right now. Greg says, or you can just ask the turtle. That's actually not a bad idea. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Age and longevity, and this kind of goes to what Peter Paul was talking about. Catherine says, sea turtles never tell the truth. Yeah, don't I know it? That's why anytime I meet a sea turtle biologist, I try to bring them over to the tortoises and freshwater turtles. I just, I can't stand them getting lied to anymore. It's just too much. It makes me feel bad for them. And it's like removing somebody who has Stockholm syndrome. So all those sea turtle people out there, they just have Stockholm syndrome. But yes, so turtle lifespans range greatly. We generally will say from 20 to 200 plus years. Some species we do believe live over 200 years, while other species may live just 2 decades or so. So if you look at the turtles I've put up there, I've put up some good examples of the extremes. So in your upper left-hand corner, you have the painted turtle. This is a turtle that is widespread across the United States and southern Canada. And it is a turtle that typically does not have the longest of lifespans, normally averaging about 20 to 30 years old. In some cases less, and in some cases more. We know in captivity, they can live up to about 45 years old, maybe even 50 years old. Now, again, I'm talking about averages. So there's always going to be outliers. A turtle that dies young, even though it is a mature adult, and a turtle that lives well beyond the normal age limit for that species. Moving on, in the upper right-hand corner, we have the chicken turtle. Okay, so the chicken turtle is native to the southeastern United States, and this is a species whose age range is estimated to be in the late teens to mid-20s. Now, it's also a species that we are still learning about. There's not we do know quite a bit about this species, but as for its longevity and some of its other attributes as this turtle is an adult, there is a paucity of information or information lacking. There's been many guesses as to the lifespan of this turtle, but again, there may be turtles who live a short amount of time, and there might be turtles who live a relatively longer lifespan than that which we estimate for this species. What we at least do know for the chicken turtle is that there have been individuals who have been recaptured 15 years after their initial capture. So that gives us evidence to show that these turtles are at least living past their teens and probably into their 20s. Let's see. Bill says, you must learn to ignore your mammalian cerebral cortex and rely on reptilian brain telepathy. You know what? I tell my girlfriend that all the time. Emily says, the chicken turtle, my old aquarium, was bullied by the sliders. Yeah, chicken turtles are a bit more of a shy, cryptic, passive species, whereas in sliders could very well kind of bully that turtle for space. The Kilonian Hut says, aren't there two species of chicken turtle? So we actually have the eastern chicken turtle, we have the Florida chicken turtle, and then we have the western chicken turtle. So there are 3 subspecies of this turtle. All right, let's move down to the lower left-hand corner. This is a turtle that we do believe lives for quite a long time. This is the alligator snapping turtle, a species that we at the TSA perform research on in Texas, and many of our friends, colleagues, and associates perform work with them throughout their range. This is a turtle that we know lives for many decades. It is believed that this species can live up to 200 years old or so. The oldest records of these turtles are somewhat well over 100 years old, but just based on their natural history, the habitats they live in, their cryptic lifestyle, we do believe, and the fact that this turtle has few, if any, predators besides humans as adults, we do believe that this large animal can live for quite a long time. All right, so yeah, Peter Paul is jumping in, corroborating what I was talking about. 3 subspecies, Western Florida and common or Eastern chicken turtle. The next one we're going to move on to, bottom right, that is one that many people know very well. That is your Galapagos tortoise. The island-dwelling tortoises, your giant tortoises, your Galapagos tortoises, your Aldabra tortoises, they are very well known to live to not only great sizes, but also lengthy lifespans. So my question is, just thinking about that, how old do you think the oldest known turtle is? Okay, so if you want to say living or deceased, that's fine, but at least that we know of. And just remember everything I've talked about today regarding estimating the age of a turtle. Take some guesses. Give you all a minute while I get back to my delicious Dunkin' Donuts coffee. All right, so we have some coming in. So Emily says, to be fair, alligator snapping turtles look like grumpy old men to begin with. I just think they look like a beautiful woman who, hasn't had her coffee yet in the morning and then awakens after that first sip. Okay, yeah, I'm just blabbering now. Okay, coffee time. All right. The Kilonian Hut guesses 189 years for an Aldabra giant tortoise. Boris asks, still living or a record holder from the past? So let's go. We'll go with both. The oldest living turtle and the oldest turtles from records past. Go with either one. All right. So then we have the Kilonian Hut says probably. Greg S says, Google, no fair. Yeah, you all can't be jumping on your computers. I want you all to use your brains. Pretend this is trivia night, okay? No cell phones, no computers, even though you have the temptation right there because you're at your computer. Catherine guesses 200. Lifestyle Turtle just does a laughing emoji. That's fine. I like it. I like laughter. It's the best medicine, so says Reader's Digest. Emily Borger says, oh gosh, I could tell you the oldest shark or clam, but I don't know about turtles. She guesses 250. Good guess right there. I believe the oldest shark is a Greenland shark who can live well over 200 years old. Is that correct, Emily? Boris says the record holder 189 for an Aldabra tortoise. All right, one more guess. Bring it on in. Here we go. Bottom of the ninth, bases loaded. Bring it in for the home run. Right now, right here, batter up. Hey, batter. Hey, batter. Emily says, I want to say 400. Catherine says 400 for a Greenland shark. That's old. Like, what do you do for 400 years? I mean, our lifespans are already pretty long. I guess they don't have to work. You know, they don't have to clean dishes and stuff. They just have to, Greenland sharks, you know, they just have to sit around in cold water, you know, swim a little bit, pass water over their gills, and, you know, hunt for some slow-moving fish or whatnot. All right, so here we go. Your answer. The oldest living tortoise right now that we know of is Jonathan. And Jonathan is an Aldabra tortoise who currently lives on the island of St. Helena off the west coast of Africa. He is purported to turn 188 years this year. So everybody that was saying 189, I will go with that because records can get fudged a little bit. So whether he hatched, oh gosh, I can't even do that math right now, but 17, 18, whatever. Either way, Jonathan is still alive. He is purported to be 188 years old or thereabouts this summer. An amazing tortoise. If anybody would like to buy me a plane ticket to go to St. Helena to see this tortoise, please add me on Venmo and just send me the money. Thank you very much in advance. You're very, very kind. But let's go to some other notables now after Jonathan. These are some good ones. Okay, so we have a couple of those giant tortoises on there. Now, always remember that sometimes because these turtles live so long and oftentimes will get passed down from family to family, the ages might get fudged just a little bit. Oh, Peter Paul says mixed up his islands. Peter Paul, it is not normal for you to get something wrong. Greg says 1832. Thank you for that math, Greg. This is why I'm just a lowly turtle biologist and not a mathematician. But here's some other turtles of note. So let's start over in the left-hand corner. This was a Galapagos tortoise named Harriet. Fittingly, Harriet died at the Australia Zoo in Bearswa, Australia, the same year that her caretaker, the beloved Steve Irwin, died. 2006 was a sad year for the world and for, of course, those at Australia Zoo with the passing of both Steve and Harriet. She was believed to be about 175 years old, and again, she died in 2006. Next, moving on in our old ones is a radiated tortoise who was throughout his life believed to be male, but after his death, necropsy showed that the turtle did in fact have ovaries and oviducts, making it female. But this tortoise lived on Tonga, which is actually formerly the Kingdom of Tonga. It was gifted to the royal family by Captain Cook. And in case you don't know your history, Captain Cook lived a long, long time ago. So Captain Cook, you know, he was a seafaring explorer, and he gifted this tortoise in the 1700s to the royal family of Tonga, where it lived until its death in 1966. At its time of death, She was about 188 years old. Again, that is much older than me, or if you can imagine, older than my dad. I can't even imagine that, but either way. So in its name, I might get this pronunciation wrong because I don't exactly speak the native tongue of Tonga, but I'm going to say Tui Malila. Tui Malila. Okay, let's go with that. If anybody out there speaks Tonganese, please let me know the correct pronunciation, or if I got it right. Maybe I got it right. The next one we're going to go to, notable turtles in history, is an Aldabra tortoise named Adwaita. Adwaita lived in the Alligator Zoo in India, in Calcutta, India, and Adwaita died in 2006. It's very interesting that two of the oldest known tortoises, one a Galapagos and one in Aldabra, died in the same year, 2006. Gosh, that was not a very good year for us, was it? But either way, it was believed to be at least 150 years old. So records of this tortoise put its lowest age at 150. But the oldest estimate for this tortoise would be 255 years old. Now that would make it the oldest chelonian known in existence. Is it possible? It is, but we don't know the real truth behind there. So we'll at least keep this at 150 years plus. And lastly, let's talk about, of course, one of my favorite turtles on Earth, the box turtle. This is an eastern box turtle in your lower right-hand corner that lives on Martha's Vineyard, an island off the coast of Massachusetts. Now, remember, Massachusetts has 4 distinct seasons. It is located in New England. It gets very, very cold during the winter, especially on Martha's Vineyard, as the cold waters from the Arctic coming down, meeting with the confluence of the Gulf Stream, bringing some harsh weather conditions to those islands off of Massachusetts. Either way, when she was first found many, many years ago, she already looked in a fairly rough condition. As you can see by this picture, her shell is quite smooth and worn down. She has some outer lying marginal scutes that look quite beat up, but she had the year 1881 inscribed on her carapace. Later, there was the year 1932 inscribed on her shell, and then again 1955. Now, you always have to you want to believe that these are true, that she was found in 1881 and had that number inscribed. And then as box turtles who have, home ranges, I'm not going to say a strict home range, because that home range, think of it as a polygon that is dynamic. So that polygon kind of shifts throughout the turtle's lifetime. But they do live in a relatively strict home range. So this turtle could be found year after year, or every couple years, or maybe decades in between. Either way, she had these dates from several decades in between inscribed in her shell. So we would like to believe that she was an adult turtle at the time of the first inscribing. That would put her at over 140 years old. Now, she is still alive, living out there upon Martha's Vineyard. I'm sure she leads a very pampered life. She may even be one of the Kennedys. I'm not sure. But she is still alive. She is still well. And if all things are true, she would be the record holder for the box turtle at over 140 years old. The typical lifespan for a box turtle is typically anywhere from 50 to 80 years old. Again, maybe shorter, maybe longer, depending on many different factors. All right, let me take a look at some of these things that people have come in. So Peter Paul says, Harriet was said to have been collected as a young animal by Charles Darwin. Yes, so Harriet was purported to have been collected by Charles Darwin. However, there are some disputes as to that account because as to the species of Galapagos tortoise that Harriet is, there are discrepancies in that account as to whether Charles Darwin actually even visited the island in which her species comes from. But you know what? I'm not going to sit here and dispute it. I'm going to love Harriet for the tortoise she was. Emily says, where did Captain Cook get a turtle? Why give turtle to the royal family? So Captain Cook was, a maritime navigator. He would have gotten this radiated tortoise most likely as a gift along his travels. So the island of Madagascar resides in the Indian Ocean, directly east of Zimbabwe, across the Zimbabwean Strait. And along his journeys, he may have gotten a young radiated tortoise as a gift. He gifted it to this Tongan royal family. And of course, as different cultures coming together might do, giving gifts is a way of showing respect, or possibly bartering, or some sort of deal or agreement was made between them. So he ended up gifting this tortoise to the royal family of the Kingdom of Tonga. All right. Emily says, yes, this turtle is one of the original Kennedys. All right, so moving on, I want to tell you again that tomorrow we are going to have a webinar right here, normal time, 11 o'clock, called Your Turtle Questions Answered. And this is where I'm going to go through questions that I wasn't able to get to, I didn't see at the time, or that needed an extended answer. So we will be answering your turtle questions. So please tune in, because there might be some stuff that we didn't get to talk about that you would really love to know the answer to. Also, it's a great time to ask new questions. I love talking to you all. I also really appreciate the support that all of you have shown throughout this Turtles 101 to 401 series. Now, Your Turtle Questions Answered will wrap up this series, and then we are going to move on to a whole entire series that talks about each specific range country program that the Turtle Survival Alliance has across the globe. And we will start with the closest range country program, which is Belize. We will make our way into South America, then across the Atlantic Ocean to Africa, and then into Southeast Asia, and eventually moving across the Pacific back to the home of the Turtle Survival Alliance, the United States. So that will be a lengthy series, but it's going to be a way for you all to learn all about just the incredible conservation efforts that are occurring on behalf of turtles and tortoises in those countries. All right, so that being said, as always, if you want to learn more that you can't get in a webinar, please find one of these turtle books. We're going to put this on the website. I've had some requests for that, some ideas of turtle books. I apologize, we didn't get to it this past week since the last webinar, but we'll put that up on our website, suggested reading list, and maybe a link to how you can get the most available and maybe up-to-date edition of that book. But either way, Also, follow us on social media. Volunteer with a turtle research group near you, or at least close to you. Or if you can, travel to the United States or live within the United States and travel. We have our North American Freshwater Turtle Research Group. Currently, all of our sampling efforts are postponed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But once we feel like the curve has been flattened out to where we are at a safe point to resume scheduling group activities, we will, of course, resume sampling for turtles in that long-term research, which we would love to get you involved in. Lastly, please, if there's anything I missed or something you want in tomorrow's Your Turtle Questions Answered webinar, send them to jgray@turtlesurvival.org. The Colonian Hut, let me go real quick to some of these as they're flying in, says, thanks for the fun discussion. No, thank you, Emily, for engaging. I love to see you on here. You've been really helpful and had great questions. The Colonian Hut says, will you do Thailand? As the Turtle Survival Alliance does not have an active program in Thailand currently, I will not be focusing on Thailand, but if there's any questions you would like me to focus on regarding turtles in Thailand, I'd be glad to talk to you about that. Okay, Boris says, gotta go. Boris, always love seeing you on the webinars, and I will hopefully see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Bill Eilerman says, thank you, Jordan. Oh, that warms my heart, Bill. Bill says, you are a great teacher and a great spokesman for the turtles. I really appreciate that. Hey, it's just doing what I love. It's my passion. And when you're passionate about something, share it with others because passion is contagious. Greg S. says, we need a full webinar on Eastern box turtles. Hey, I'll do it. I love box turtles. So you want me to do a full webinar? Hey, you want me to do a full webinar on Eastern box turtles? Hey, I'll do it. I will do it. Mike says, thank you for what are you doing for turtles? Well, thank you. You know, just by being here, you are helping turtles yourself. Knowledge is power. All right. Oh, look at that. Emily says, even though COVID has shut down everything, I wouldn't have known about TSA otherwise. Well, I guess that is some silver lining that you get to be here learning with us. So thank you, Emily. All right. Yes, there's another one tomorrow. Chris says goodbye. All right. So the last thing I will say, of course, get involved. Check out our TSA's 10 ways you can help turtles on our website. As always, volunteer with the turtle program. Become a TSA member because guess what? There is a pandemic going on right now, and that affects the TSA as well. So please become a TSA member or supporter because all of our programs rely upon your support to continue. Turtle conservation does not take a break. 24/7, 365 days a year, the TSA is actively helping protect the turtles and tortoises of the world, but we can't do that without your help. So during this time of need, well, you know, please think of us if there's anything you can do to help. All right, shameless plug, but it's the truth of the matter. All the turtles and tortoises we're caring for are still under threat. They still need food, they still need water, they still need medical care, and they still need your support. All right, again, social media at Turtle Survival on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We love having you all there. Go there right now. Please follow all of them. We update social media numerous times throughout the day, so there's always going to be something that you will find interesting, I hope. And of course, go to our website, turtlesurvival.org. And with that, as always, this cute little dog riding on the back of a Sulcata or African spur-thighed tortoise. So I will see you all tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Thank you very much for tuning in. And just remember, Turtle. Knowledge is Turtle power. So stay safe. Loved having you on. Good afternoon, good evening, or good night. Au revoir.